Hey guys, welcome to His Bride channel. For those who've never been on this channel, welcome guys. Thank you for coming in and looking at the channel. I'm sure you've seen my previous videos that may have brought you to the channel. But today, this video is probably not going to be edited much. There's probably not going to be any real editing to it. Main reason why is just because there's some things that have happened recently that have been heavy on my heart, and I wanted to kind of share my perspective on it. So excuse me, I'm outside in my apartment, outside in the patio area, so if I'm swatting away a bug, excuse me. So I don't mean to do that, but in seriousness, wanted to talk about the murder of George Floyd. I know this is a very politically charged conversation and a lot of people have an opinion about it, but I'm coming with the opinion of a Christian woman. I'm coming from the opinion of being a black woman and being the mother of 3 black boys. So I hope you can just hear me out before you're ready to dismiss what I have to say. I think that I'm trying to come from a different perspective as far as just trying to get you to understand or have some level of understanding as to why this is such an issue. You know, for many years, we've seen the murder of many lives due to police brutality or due to the color of somebody's skin. I mean, there's so many names that can come to light, you know, not just George Floyd, but Philando Castro. We have Breonna Taylor recently as well, Sandra Bland, people who have just been killed by police brutality. And I think that something that first of all, I would just say that I'm very blessed to go to a church. I go to Rock Springs Church in Milner, Georgia. I'm very blessed to go to a church that this topic has been very heavy on his heart. And I know the heart of the man, and he just loves people. And so I know it's been heavy on his heart. We've talked about it so many different times. Several of the pastors and I have had conversations about the George Floyd situation. I've had people come up to me and ask me my opinion about everything, and I'm just so grateful to have a place to call my church home where these conversations can be had, and they would ask me my opinion. And so this is why I really feel like I really want to share. But something that one of the pastors asked me was, first of all, how do you feel about it? Which that was just, I told him, I said, that's the first step, is to just ask. But the second thing he said is, before George Floyd, I want you to tell me, in your perspective, have you always had some type of fear of brutality or police or racism? You know, the interesting part is, as a mother, I didn't realize that I had already begun to indoctrinate my children in that level of fear, or try to protect and shield my kids from it by teaching them certain things. You know, the first thing I realized is what I was taught. It, you know, made me really sit and reflect. And I was taught to be more polite than everybody else, to be friendlier than everybody else, to be to not lose my temper, to not be the angry black woman, to not be frustrated, to not be human, to not have human emotions. I think we all need to have some level of self-control and self-discipline as Christians. But I think that what I was taught was to be better than everybody, to strive harder than everybody, work harder than everybody, because that would just allow me to be on equal footing with everybody else. And that's not fair, and that's not right. And even if you work hard, there are going to be times where somebody's going to say you don't belong. And I've experienced that as a physician. I've experienced feeling like I don't belong, even though I do. I've experienced being discriminated against in the workplace and having to just bite the bullet because I want to provide for my family. And there are times I will say I'm even ashamed I've not really fought against it. I know I would sit with my black colleagues and we would talk about it and we would discuss why it's wrong. But none of us wanted to sacrifice our job to fight the systemic racism that we were seeing in different hospital systems and different places that we worked. And so this is something I've just become, to a certain level, numb to, But over the last 5, 8 years, with the advent of people recording their experiences and actually having tape and being able to see the level of devastation that I already knew existed, but actually to see it in real, live, and living color has really brought that to the surface more. And what I realized is that I have already begun to start trying to protect my children from certain things. And I explained to this friend who was a white pastor, and we were discussing it together. I was explaining to him that I've already started to teach my kids certain things, like be polite. You know, when the police come around, you be polite. You don't look like you're doing anything criminal. If you're in the store, don't touch anything unless we're going to buy it. And you know, don't lose your temper in public. You know, when we're home, you have the freedom to get upset, to get mad, to get frustrated, but we can't have tantrums outside. They don't need to have any reason to think that we're not dignified, or we're not, or that we're unruly, or that we're criminal in any way. And I didn't realize I was teaching my kids this. And there was one incident, several incidents that came to my mind, but one of them that came to my mind as I was talking to this pastor was, my middle son is 10 years old, and he's about 5'5". He's a big boy. So he's tall. He wears a size 11 shoe. He's just a big boy. And the doctors predict he's going to be about 6'4", 6'5", and probably 250 easy. And so I always get nervous about him, especially after, and I cannot remember the young man's name, and y'all forgive me if I forget his name, but the 12-year-old who was shot for playing with a BB gun outside, being just a kid. But I'm sure because of his size and because of the fact that he was black, he was seen to be a criminal, and somebody called the cops on him. And rather than ask him questions, they just shot him because his life just wasn't important. And so I remember it was not too long after that incident. My son was getting upset with his brother, and he had a really, you know, sometimes he has a temper. And so, like all kids do at that age, they're still learning themselves. And so he got really, really mad and really upset. And I just remember shaking him and saying, Tyson, do you see how big you are? Do you see you're bigger than everybody in your class? Do you see that how large you are? I said, the problem is, baby, you're a black boy who's this size. If somebody sees you getting this angry or getting this frustrated about something, they're going to think that you are a threat. And if they think you're a threat, they'll take you away from me. They'll kill you. They'll take you away from me. I don't want anybody to take you away from me. So you have to learn how to control your temper. And my son began to weep and cry, and I began to cry because I just realized what I had said to my son. And that came from a place of fear. I'm afraid. I'm afraid that my 12-year-old is about to become 16, is going to start driving. Most of the things that happen with police brutality is with people just being, going to the library, taking a nap, going to the store, being on the street, being in a car. People, there's nothing they have to do to provoke this level of brutality. And that's the part that frustrates me, is when I always keep hearing, if they would just. Well, you're allowed to just be also. You're allowed to be in a car and listen to music. You're allowed to stop at the side of the road. You're allowed to do certain things without having to have a conversation with a police officer about just being. You're allowed to do certain things that have freedoms that I don't have and my kids don't have. And so I realized that I'm teaching them to not be human, to not be flawed. All have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. And even the word says that. So why are my kids not allowed to be flawed and allowed to grow in their faith and grow as human beings and be flawed? This perception of perfection in order to please people, so that they don't see us as a threat as Black people, is unfair. And so all these things came flooding back to my memory. I remembered after my youngest was born, Taj, it was late in the evening, and my ex-husband at the time grabbed the kids and said, well, we're about to leave, and you and Taj be here and we'll go home. So I said, no problem. So it was in the evening, it was dark outside, and we were in Thomaston, Georgia, so in a rural area. And unfortunately, I experienced a lot of those kind of things there in Thomaston. But anyway, that's beside the point. So my husband takes the kids, puts them in the Honda Pilot, and they're driving back home to the house in Milner. And on the way, right near the hospital, a deer, if you live anywhere in that area, Upson County, Lamar County, a lot of deer. And so the deer comes across, now he's got two small kids in the back. The deer comes across the car and clips the edge of the car. And so, but the deer clipped it enough where he could keep running. And so he ran off. And so my husband, of course, stops the car and parks the car and goes outside to look and see the damage, as any person would if that happens. So he stops in the middle of the road. There's no traffic. It's probably 9 o'clock at night near the hospital. Nobody's really there. And so he goes to look and see what the damage is. The kids are, y'all okay? Goes to look at the damage, and whoop, whoop, cop comes. So ideally, in a normal situation, you would say, oh, the cop's coming to just check on him and make sure he's okay. So he comes. And so my, Thal at that time figures that's what he's coming for. He's just coming to check on him, see how he's doing. But that's not what happens, Sir, what are you here for? Why are you stopped in the middle of the road? Well, sir, my car got clipped by a deer, and I just wanted to make sure the assess the damage. Why are you parked in the middle of the road? Sir, as I explained to you, is in the middle of the road. License and registration. No problem, sir. He goes in the car. He gets license and registration. He sits in the car. He gets drilled for about 45 minutes outside of the hospital. He said, my wife is right up there. I promise you, I'm not doing anything. I have 2 small children in the car. I'm going to go home. I'm literally coming from the hospital. Why are you here this time of night? Why are you here? Why are you parked in the middle of the road? As if he was a criminal and he had done nothing wrong. And at this point, my ex-husband calls me so that I can hear the conversation, so he's not by himself trying to figure out, in case something goes wrong. And I'm here, just had a baby, having to hear this conversation and having to keep him calm because he's getting frustrated because he doesn't understand why he's being drilled and being questioned for just being. So the whole point is, I could come up with numerous stories of having to pray for him every time he would go for a drive, because I don't know what could happen when he goes on a drive, and being called, I'm getting harassed about this or that. This is the experience of people every day. And so I'm raising 3 boys in a world where their life does not have inherent value, and it is not fair. And I'm just grateful that the church is stepping up, that people are stepping up and recognizing that this inequality has been going on too long. And so I just ask, as Christians, as godly people, my advice would be to first, if there are any people in your life who are Black, who you can have conversations with, ask them. It'll feel awkward at first, but just say, hey, can I ask you something? And if that person says, I don't feel comfortable talking about that topic, that's okay. But at least broach the question, because that says something about your heart that you really want to understand. So that's the first thing I would say. Second thing is, befriend people who don't look like you. Go out of your way to try to find somebody who is non-white, Black, Hispanic, anybody, and befriend them. Get to know them, their inherent value. Because I think if you do not have anybody in your friend circle who's not Black or non-white, I think that your point of view can be skewed by that. So it's really important to find a friend who is non-Black, create relationships with their family, their kids, have their kids play with their kids, so their kids understand that the world is not looked one way, that the world has many colors, many ethnicities, many ways of looking at life the way God created it. And God created all this variety. He created all of us in his image. Black, white, orange, brown, blue, we were all created in his image. So that's the second thing I would say. And the third thing I would say is, if you see or hear ignorance, call it out. If your friends are ignorant, it doesn't have to be nasty, it doesn't have to be mean, but if you see somebody say or do anything ignorant, call them out and say, hey, that's not right. Seek justice, love mercy, walk humbly with our God, is what the word says. And so I just challenge my brothers and sisters in Christ who are white or who are non-Black to really go out of their way to be justice, to be the hands and feet of Jesus, and to defend those who are defenseless. All right, guys, so that's all I have to say today. I pray y'all have a great day. Bye.